Hello folks, welcome back to DIY guitar making. If you like what I do and you get a little something out of the lessons that I teach, do me a favor and visit ericschaferguitars.com where you can check out my structured online courses or check out my list of dates for upcoming guitar building workshops. Okay, so we are back on guitar number 116 right now. Let me bring you up to date on about where we are. So I just glued down the back braces over there. They're in the Go Bar deck with my special bracing pattern for the Parlor guitars, and I cut out a bunch of brace blanks and radius them and got them prepped for the top as well for this Parlor model. And well, now before I actually brace the top, I have to cut out the channel for the Rosette and cut out the sound hole as well. So I have a couple aesthetic decisions to be making at this point, which is why I've pulled in a bunch of other elements of the guitar just so I can kind of think about it and look at it. What I've decided is to go with something that has been tried and true for me, and that's to do this binding and purfling scheme with a similar looking mother of pearl rosette on the top, tying everything together. A little tip for you guys, one thing that I like to do is when I'm trying to figure out a overall binding and purfling and rosette scheme for a given guitar, you can very quickly and easily super glue up a little mock sample, which then I keep all these samples in a tiny little bin where I can pull them out and you know, I can check them out. I could see if they'll work on a fretboard, right? I can hold it up to the top like this and say, oh yeah, that works with redwood. Okay, so it's three-dimensional. It's got the purfling on the top, and then it also has the side purfling down here, so you really can get a picture of the whole effect that you're going for. So the last guitar I did this on was guitar number 85, 86, something like that. I think it was 85. I think I got my number correct. Yes, number 85. It says so on the label. The label doesn't lie. So you can see it worked quite well here, in which case I also had a redwood top, just like I'll be having here. But I had zero coat back and side, so a much darker back and side set than the maple that I'll be using for number 116. But judging by the sapwood that I get right here, I can see that this scheme is going to work well with a light colored wood on the back and sides as well. So that's why I'm going to go with it. And like I said, it's tried and true, and I like it. So installing mother of pearl is quite interesting. What we have to do is essentially cut our channel to the size of the two outer strips that we'll be using, which will look something like this, but they'll be a little bit thinner, plus the mother of pearl itself. And then when we glue it up, with the mother of pearl you're going to want to use super glue or cyanoacrylate glue. However, with the wooden or dyed fiber strip portions of the rosette, I'm going to want to use Titebond. And I'm going to want to do those first because I don't want that cyanoacrylate glue to, I don't want to flood that area and get it all over the top, because it's going to sink deeply in between the grain lines of the softwood. Super glues and softwoods don't work together very well unless you're very careful. You can sometimes get away with it, but in 50% of cases you actually end up with a stain that is too deep to sand out if you use super glue on a softwood top. So with that in mind, what we're going to do is sandwich a Teflon strip in between our two purfling strips, and that's going to be like a stand-in for the mother of pearl. And then once that all dries, you can actually pull the Teflon strip back out. It kind of pulls out just like a piece of licorice. It's this little white strip. It's kind of cool. And we'll pull that out, and then we go through the tedious but very enjoyable, quite satisfying job of assembling our little curved sections of mother of pearl one at a time and adjusting the joint visually of each individual piece as we go. Alright, so let's take a look at the materials we have. Okay, it's really hard to hold these together, but in the end it's going to be something like that. So the mother of pearl will be right between these two black, white, black purfling strips, but all I have to do right now is I'm going to actually inlay this. okay? Because the Teflon strip is a placeholder for the mother of pearl. Recently, we lost LMI, right? They shut down, they shut their doors. This is where I used to get these Teflon strips. When I'm home editing this video, I'll see if I can throw something up on the screen as to where else to get these right now, if I can find another place. But I did have someone else on either the members forum or in my YouTube comments had mentioned an alternative to using the Teflon strips, which was to apply wax in some fashion to thin wood strips that you make yourself. Okay, so whether you dip that in wax or rub like a paste wax onto the wood, I'm not sure exactly what would be the method, but I think maybe that will set you in a proper direction to figure that out for yourself if you do a little bit of research. So that's a way to get around this. Waxing some, I would probably take a purfling strip like we have here and wax that to be your placeholder. Sounds like a promising lead to me, so you guys try that out and let me know what you think. But hopefully in due time the market will make up for the fact that LMI is no longer around, and it will find a solution for us. Anyway, I've got plenty of Teflon strips here for myself right now, so selfishly I'm going to proceed forward with doing this rosette. And I wish you guys the best of luck in sourcing your Teflon. So these are also a product you can buy from Lutherie suppliers. A lot easier to just purchase them like this than it would be to shape these curves yourself. So you can get these from Stu Mac. LMI used to have them, of course, and probably from other suppliers like DePaul Supply, I'd imagine, would have these curved bits as well. And just make sure, of course, that the thickness of your Teflon strip matches the thickness of your mother of pearl. Alright, well anyway, I don't have enough of these pearl pieces to complete the job, so all we're going to do today is cut out our channel and do the first glue up where we install the binding strip and the Teflon sandwiched in between. Oh, and one last thing I want to say about these little curved pieces of mother of pearl that you can buy. This is a standard curve that's going to work for any rosette that you'll be doing. It's a question that comes up often. You're not actually trying to find something that matches the diameter of your circle. What you just buy this standard curve. It's a gentle curve, and as you'll see when we actually assemble this, you adjust the mating edges of the individual pieces to different angles to compensate for how much curve you need. And in some cases you not only adjust the mating edges but also the length of the piece. So the way that you match the curve of your circle is a function of the angles that the pieces join together and the length of the individual pieces. Okay, and that'll be the same when you use this for purfling that follows the curves of the upper and lower bout as well. Okay, and without further ado, let's do some Lutheran. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is retrace the outline on here, and it would help to know where my center line is, of course. Now, finding the jointed center line is always a bit of a, well, I shouldn't say always a bit of a challenge. If you do a really poor job with the with your book matching, and candlelighting that seam very poorly, then this second part is actually a lot easier. But hey, I don't do that, so I get a really tight seam every time, and so I struggle to find it later on. My little trick though for finding it is, it's not much of a trick, it's really just to find it in three different places, at least 3 different places, and then take a straight edge, and if those 3 marks or 4 marks or 5 marks line up with the straight edge, then, well, that's just a good validation that you didn't, for example, choose a grain line adjacent to your center line, right? It's real easy to be confused by a grain line here. So I can tell that's the center. I can tell that's it up there. And let's find one down here. Yeah, there I can see the seam. So sometimes you can see it best on the end grain, on the edge, but not always. And that is definitely the center line right there. So I've got 3 marks. I could find a couple more if I was really unsure, but I'm fairly confident. So I'll line this up, and all of my marks are straight in the line. So let's go ahead and trace it. And then let's pull this onto the other side as well. Man, I gotta say, I love working with these tiny parlor sizes. I mean, this is just such a childishly small piece of wood for a guitar, at least to me, with what I'm used to and what most guitar makers, acoustic guitar makers, are used to. Almost like it's not that much bigger than like a baritone ukulele. Doesn't even feel like a guitar. Maybe I should be a ukulele maker. Nah, I like guitars more. Okay, so that looks good. Yep, double check. This is my show face, that's why I wrote show there. Let's line up the seams of my mold with that center line I just traced. Okay, that looks really good. Now I can go ahead and lay out for the rosette. So I've got my template here, and I'm going to use this to measure the distance. Here, I'll show you on this because it's easier to see. The distance from the top of my outline, where the neck joint will be, to where the center of the sound hole is. So from there to the center of this block right here. Because the block gets in the way, though, I'm going to measure from the back side of my template. That is 142.5 millimeters. Okay, now just kind of eyeball that and see, if I place this right on there, yep. I can see my mark through that hole. Okay. So that works. I guess there is a way to, tape this in place and then just mark through the template hole, but I find it quicker and easier to just use a ruler sometimes, measure things. So now let me punch out that location with an awl. Very hard to keep this on the center sometimes because the prominent resistance that you get when you're directly on a grain line, the difference between the hardness of a grain line and the hardness of the area between the grain lines always makes it so that when you try to land right on your mark, often you're pulled to an area of weaker resistance just off to the side of the mark. Such is the nature of wood. There's not much you can do about that except to kind of, if you kind of fiddle your all around, you can sort of force that mark over a little bit if it pulls to the side at first. And now I can go back to my template and grab my radius of the circle. 41 millimeters. Oh, and by circle I mean sound hole, not the rosette. And I'm going to mark that in more than one place just to be sure. So I mark the sound hole first because we're going to trace that out with a compass, and then to get the rosette, all you have to do is measure about 3 millimeters out from the sound hole. That's a pretty good standard. Of course, it's aesthetic. You can go further than that. I wouldn't necessarily go less than 3 millimeters. In that case, there's just not enough distance between the sound hole and the rosette, and it looks kind of odd. Okay, now of course some rosettes, it's not altogether too common, but some rosettes go right to the edge of the sound hole. You can do whatever you want. I'm just saying a best practice here is that 3 millimeters at a minimum, and probably not a lot more than 3 millimeters either, because then it starts to look, if you create too much of a distance between the sound hole and the rosette, it also starts to look a little funny. Okay, that looks good. Give it the eyeball test. Yeah, it matches my template, or appears to. So then, like I said, we are just going to go 3 millimeters out from that. And that will be the inside edge of our rosette. Okay, so this space in here is the sound hole. Put SH there for sound hole. And the rosette is actually on the other side of the outer line. Easy thing, I mean, this is just how I mark things, but it would be easy to confuse this here and consider the inside of these two lines the rosette. That is incorrect in this case. The reason, you might at this point mark the outside width, I guess you would measure off the inside of the rosette. You might measure the full width of the rosette then, but I typically don't, simply because it's something we're going to sneak up on. I only really need to know where the inside edge of my rosette is in order to get started. Okay, so I can make my first cut and then just adjust the radius outward until my rosette fits in that channel. All right, so now let's drill out a hole in the center so that we can fit the soundboard onto a pin and then fit our circle cutting jig with a Dremel onto that pin as well and get cutting. Okay, just drilled a 3/16 of an inch hole to fit a 3/16 of an inch pin, which I have mounted in a board that I keep on hand for just such a purpose as cutting out sound holes and rosette channels. So all this is, I'll show you, is just a board, a piece of plywood, nothing special about that, with a 3/16 inch hole drilled in it. And then this little pin goes right in there. Okay, you can order pins like this, Fastenal, or you could just take a 3/16 of an inch drill bit and use the the portion of it without flutes. You could even cut that bit down so that the spiral fluted portion is non-existent. But hey, you can just order some pins. That's what I like to do. Alright, so that fits on there nice and snugly. The edges, it's a good idea to just put a couple pieces of tape down. And this is just so that when we route, the soundboard isn't going to want to spin with us. This is the same tape that I use for installing the binding. And yes, it's that binding tape that Stu Mac sells. Okay, so now I've got a Dremel. Nothing special about that. It's the inexpensive one. I'll get the cord out of the way. Dremel 100. There you go. But now the expensive part comes in down here. This is a Stu Mac base and the Stu Mac circle cutting jig. Those are very pricey. You can make your own circle cutting jig by simply drilling a hole in the center and then mounting the Dremel at a certain distance from that hole. You could even just make it a fixed jig that always cuts your rosettes or your sound holes if they're always cut in the same location. You can make it a fixed jig like that. It'd be a bit more complicated to make it adjustable like this is, but hey, that's why, we spend money for these things instead of just making them ourselves sometimes. It wouldn't be terribly difficult to make it adjustable though. You could do that too. I believe in you. You got this. I'm not going to do that. So yeah, this fits right on the pin. The bit is a spiral down cut bit. In this case, it's a 7/64 of an inch bit. Don't worry about that exact size. The only important thing about the size is that the bit is smaller than the total thickness of what you intend, or not thickness, but width of what you intend to inlay. If the bit's larger than that, then you're going to cut an oversized channel. So this is 128 thousandths of an inch. That's my 2 purfling strips and the Teflon strip. And I know that 7/64 is less than that. So that means that I can cut my way down to depth and then slowly adjust the radius through subsequent passes until I just barely sneak up on my fit with these 3 pieces. First, let's set the radius for our rosette channel. So I'm going to bring this down till it's close to flush, but I don't want to go flush with the soundboard just yet, because when I adjust the radius, I don't need the bit to be dragging across the soundboard surface. So it's just a hair above flush, which just makes it easier to see and line myself up. And I'm going to line the bit up so it's right on the edge of that line. So remember, that line represents, the outside line represents the inside edge of the sound hole. Okay, and then I can lock that in place. By the way, it's very important. This is one of those obvious, not so obvious things if you don't really think about it. It's very important to cut your rosette channel first before you cut out the sound hole. Because once you cut out the sound hole, you are then suddenly unmoored from the pin, right? The whole soundboard is no longer anchored by the pin because you've separated. And now the only thing anchored by the pin is the tiny little coaster that you make on the inside. Anyway, don't cut out your sound hole coaster first. You'll be in a world of trouble, and it's very difficult then to cut out your rosette channel afterwards. Okay, so I've got the radius for the rosette channel set, and we're going to go ahead and make our first passes and work our way all the way down to the depth that we want, which the depth is always not something you have to be super precise about. I just want my channel to be deep enough that I can embed this material in such a way that I'm confident that I'm not going to accidentally sand through the material later on, okay? So usually about 2/3 of the depth of the material that you're provided. So to that end, I would say, I'm just kind of eyeballing this right now, but going about 70 thousandths of an inch into your soundboard, I feel safe. I feel confident that it's embedded in there and I'm not going to sand through it. And you know, just out of curiosity, let's see how deep this channel is, but honestly, as long as it looks good. Oh wow, 71 thousandths of an inch. That's funny, I said 70. So yeah, that's exactly, almost exactly on what I estimated. Looked good to me. So yeah, 70 thousandths of an inch. So now let's turn back to our fiber strips and Teflon for a moment here before we adjust the radius and widen out our channel. I'm going to go ahead and cut my nippers right here. I'm going to go ahead and cut my pieces approximately to length. I say approximately because you actually want to cut them a little bit shy, because in the end there's going to be a gap up here in the area that's hidden by the fretboard tongue. So I'm going to have 2 pieces of this black, white, black dyed fiber strip. Okay. And then I've got the Teflon. You want to be real careful with your channel edges, by the way, when you're test fitting things. They're nice and crisp right now. We don't want to indent them. Okay, so this shouldn't fit right now, but let's go ahead and check the fit anyway. Yep, there's no way I can fit this 3rd piece in there. Okay, so that's just worth checking. We want to, before we start adjusting the radius, we want to make sure that we're not going to overcut that radius. All right, and now to adjust the radius, I'm actually going to start by turning this on, lowering it to depth. So I'm in the channel right now, and then I'm going to loosen this, and while it's still running, I'm going to adjust the radius until it just kisses that outside edge. So you hear that, you can actually hear that pitch increase when you adjust it, which tells you that you're contacting the edge just slightly. Okay, so I did one pass, just barely kissing that edge, and now I can take my 3 pieces again, 2 purfling strips and 1 Teflon strip, and I can test that fit again. However, I know I've probably got more than 1 micro pass like that to go, so before I even test this, I'm going to do another pass. So again, start it in the channel, loosen the lock, and adjust. Okay, you hear that pitch increase? That means I'm just kissing the edge. Okay, and just do 1 pass. You definitely want to be conservative and check frequently, even though I didn't check the last time. You want to be conservative and check as frequently as you can. So I'm going to check right now. And one thing I wanted to mention too, it just came to my mind. A big mistake to make here is I've seen students I've seen them forget to lock this after they adjust. They hear that pitch change and they just start turning, but this is still unlocked. And that radius is actually going to slowly drift as you're turning the jig around the pin. And you'll end up with a wonky rosette channel. Just be conscious of that. Remember, after you adjust the radius, lock. Lock this before you start turning. Okay, that's still not even starting to accept the 3rd piece, so we'll keep going. Okay, so that seems to be going in, but you know, here's the thing. So if this fits in there just perfectly tight, which is, you know, usually a good thing. However, I know that I'm going to be using Titebond to glue this in, and Titebond is a water-based glue. Water-based glues swell the fibers because of the water. So when you're using a water-based glue like Titebond for a rosette channel, you actually want to make sure that you have just a hair of wiggle room, because if you are super duper tight and you can just barely kind of force the rosette in with your finger, then once you add the glue, that channel is going to close up ever so slightly, and you are going to be in the very uncomfortable situation of now having curing glue in your channel. Your rosette is not fitting and there's nothing you can do about it. Now you're really in trouble. So all you have to do is make sure that it's just a hair loose. And what I mean by that, I truly mean just a hair. I just give it the wiggle test, and I can't really quantify this or explain it other than to say that I want to feel the slightest wiggle, and I do mean the slightest. We're not trying to put a noticeable gap in there, because if it's noticeable by the eye, that's probably not going to close up when you add the glue. But if it's just a tiny little wiggle that you can feel, then when you add the glue and you put the rosette in there, that channel is actually going to tighten around the rosette, and it's going to look absolutely seamless and perfect. Okay, so just be aware of that. If you're using Titebond, leave your channel just a hair wider. And actually, I am getting that slight wiggle right now, so this is good to go. So I could go ahead and glue this in right now, but what I like to do is actually cut out the sound hole first before I do that. So with the channel just open like that, we're going to go ahead, readjust our radius for the sound hole radius now, and cut all the way down to depth. Still doing it in small increments until I go all the way through the soundboard. All right, and there's our coaster. Look at that. So you want to be very careful removing this tape. You always want to roll it at an angle to the grain, and you want to just kind of roll it off rather than pulling it straight up. That way you'll keep most of the fibers on there. Alright, we are ready to go. Just checking which piece is my inside diameter piece and which is the outside diameter. You'll notice one is cut slightly shorter, and that means that it was the one that I originally had on the inside. So I'd rather not mix those up and then find as I'm gluing it that the ends collide and don't quite fit all the way in there. Okay, and I like to have on hand just a little scrap piece of purfling. It just makes a nice handy glue spreader, as you'll see. So first, let's go ahead and just run a bead along the bottom of the channel. Again, as always, being gentle with those edges. We don't want to indent them. It's a very soft wood. And now I can take my little scrap and just push that bead around so that it pushes up against the sidewalls, so that we also get adhesion against the sidewalls and not just the bottom of the channel, because sometimes the rosette doesn't seat all the way at the bottom of the channel. Alright, give it a good press in there. I can clean up some of that glue squeeze out. I'm not too worried about, in this case, getting a little bit on there, because we're still going to thickness this top down just a little bit. And lastly, I just like to put a weight on it. This is a nice heavy weight that I found at an antique shop at one point, and it works great for this. Alright, and so that's it for now. Hopefully you guys will get to see in another video. If I don't make a video of installing the little curved mother of pearl bits in there, then perhaps I'll show you a little of it when I do the purfling. It's the same process either way, like I mentioned before, just adjusting either the length of the piece or the angle that the piece is cut in order to follow your curve of either the perimeter of the guitar if you're doing the purfling or the circumference of the rosette. Okay, but hey, if you've gotten this far, you could probably figure out that other part from the detail I've given you just now. Alright, well, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I hope you got something out of this. And that's all I got for you today, so I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.
If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.